Well, looks like it's just us, Dr. Armstrong.
I know. That's all right. That's all right.
Oh,
Um,
I
I
think
bet
this
I bet
this
there'd
might
be
be
a
the first time I've actually gotten to see you and talk to you. I'm actually in both your child psychopathology and adult psychopathology courses, but they're both on Sunday, and I've never been able to make it.
oh man, I'm sorry about that. It's a challenge to find like a good time that works for everybody for the online classes.
Sure.
Um, just because most people are taking like weekday classes, and I tried doing a poll one time, and literally it was like 25% of people had it like on Tuesdays, 25% had it on Wednesdays, and like the rest of them on Thursdays.
We have the exact same problem. I play in a Dungeons and Dragons group with a bunch of old college friends that we still have ongoing.
Yeah.
That we've all gone our separate ways. We have people in different cities, one guy in a different state, and finding one day that we can all meet consistently, uh, hellish nightmare.
Gosh. And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
27.
Yeah, it gets harder, right? Like to find that time the older you get.
It does.
Like,
I had a professor at the last college I went to. It was Dallas Baptist University, and
uh-huh.
he was in his mid 60s, I think, and he looked at us one day and said, guys, he goes, just so you know, you're never going to be less busy than you are now. And I was like, I'm volunteering, I'm in school full time, I'm working full time. Like, this guy's,
Gosh, yeah,
and then 6 years later, I'm like, wow, suddenly I'm still more busy than I was then.
man. And are you married?
Yes, I am married. Yeah.
Okay. Any kiddos?
Not yet, where that's shortly on the horizon, though, I hope.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right around the by the way, I had just turned 29 when I started teaching at Amberton, and
Wow.
yeah, and gosh, and it feels like it was yesterday, but also like a century ago because the past 4 years felt like, or past 2 years felt like it's been 100 years. But yeah, but yeah, yeah, it's like like you go. I remember being in high school thinking like, gosh, it's just like yesterday I was a freshman. This is going by so fast, and then like you halfway blink, and then you're done with college.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid thinking things last forever. Like very distinctly being in second grade, being like, "How am I ever going to make it to the
I know.
12th grade? It's so far away." And now I'm like, "Oh, did a whole year go by? That's weird. I don't remember any of it."
You know what's funny is they've done like psychological research or cognitive research on kiddos versus adults in their estimation of how long like a minute is, and like just subjectively, like
Yeah.
so they would say, okay, I think they were like maybe 10-year olds or something, like old enough to understand what a minute was,
Right.
and kiddos consistently like would would take a lot longer to identify how long the minute has been,
Yeah.
because time just passes slower for them. Yeah.
I heard something similar that I think it was a grad student up at Columbia for his thesis. He wanted to study how or if animals can perceive time differently than we do.
Uh,
And there's a running theory now that the total lifespan of a creature affects its ability to perceive time. So
Interesting.
like a fly
That's
that only has a lifespan of a week is literally seeing things in three or four or magnitudes of order slower than we're seeing them. So like when we try to slap a fly, it's not just
yeah.
that it can see everything at once and see you coming. It's that your hand moving towards it is so comparatively slow to it
Interesting.
because that's just how its brain works. They don't know why.
And I'm a secret, like, not a secret. That's not a secret. I'm a real big nerd, and I read about not just psychology stuff. I read about like time travel and like
Oh,
all kinds of stuff, and um, yeah, so that's fascinating. So in other words, like the longer an animal lives, the the faster they're going to perceive time. Is that right?
pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
Interesting.
what might be a minute to us is comparably,
Right. Yeah.
to a fly or something like that. And that they also theorize that might be why kids have different perceptions of time than adults do, because it's not just the total lifespan that you have available, but also the amount of time that you have lived up until a certain point. So, but
Huh.
basic mathematics is a month is 10% of a 2-year-old's
Oh yeah.
life,
Yeah.
whereas a month is, 1/100th of our lives. And so as you live longer, your perception of how long something is shortened because it's comparably
Yeah.
short compared to how long you've lived.
I think the strange part is that like I've never had the conscious thought of like, okay, well next month I'm gonna think about time a little bit longer, you know? So it's like it's the experience of it shapes it in a way that's imperceptible, like subjectively, you know?
Just the slow passage of time.
Yeah. Well, um, I mean honestly, I could talk about this stuff all day long, too,
I don't
but
know if it'd be terribly interesting
um
to everybody who gets the recording link, but
but I can tell you that right, everybody's like, what in the world is this?
just
But I can tell you that the usefulness of what we talk about would increase substantially if we went back to subjects that I am actually knowledgeable about versus just I can make up a bunch of stuff when it comes to like theories and the philosophies of like I mean, I say that at one point in time I wanted to be a theoretical astrophysicist. And then I realized you have to take physics for that. And then
I mean, I
I
can see
just
it.
that was the obstacle. But yeah, I have ADHD, and so I tend to kind of like have these like pockets of my life where I was just hyper focused on like one topic or so for a while and learned all there is to know about it and then moved on. And so
I
yeah.
feel, yeah, I was at my some of the people in my hometown still remember me as the black hole kid because there was about a 6-month period where I got really interested in as a fourth grader and when just like any
Uh-huh.
adult was willing to talk to me, I'm like, have you heard about black holes? Do you know how cool they are? Let me tell you all about them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And tell me how far are you in the program?
This is it for me. I start pre-practicums next quarter. I got really lucky. We're actually planning on moving back to my hometown in East Texas at the end of what will be the next quarter, and so
Uh-huh.
I got everything lined up just right so that I could finish all my classwork this quarter. That's why I'm taking both the child and
Child. Yeah.
psychopathology at the same time because I actually thought that I had more time, and I misread the criteria for taking the practicum course and the pre-practicum. I knew you had to take the practicums one quarter at a time with
Right.
all of your classes were completed. I had missed that the pre-practicum was included in that set of
Yeah.
criteria. So
Yeah.
last quarter, I looked around and went, "Oh no, I thought I had
Oh.
2 quarters to take 5 classes, and I actually have I had 2 quarters to take 5 classes, but 4 of them needed to happen this
Yeah,
quarter."
and in one go, man. Yeah, you had a busy semester then.
It was pretty busy, but I felt
Uh,
very blessed because the way you run your classes is all of the assignments are due just at the end, so I wasn't pressured. I could do all the coursework for my other classes and do yours as time allowed. So yeah, I
well,
think it almost providentially well.
I I don't mean to make my classes as easy as they are, and I know that they're easy. But here's the thing, man, is y'all are in grad school. I'm not here to teach you how to work hard. Like you're in grad school, you obviously you can work hard.
Yeah.
Um, you just need to have like some structure around what you would otherwise be learning on your own because of your passion.
Yep.
And so if I could get rid of grades, I would, but I'm probably one of the only uh, ENTPs in the counseling faculty. The rest of them are J's, and so they all just think I'm like the most nuttiest of the nutty professors. Yeah.
Is the council
Um,
filled with a lot of J's, or is that just in the academic sphere?
there are.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, there's actually the vast majority of students are J's. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you a P?
Nope, I'm a J. I
Okay.
lean pretty heavy towards the middle though. Like I've taken
Uh,
the I must have taken the Myers-Briggs 7 or 8 times over the last decade because Dallas Baptist University, they used
yeah.
that as their almost like their grading metric for if you wanted to work on campus, you could apply to a position, but they were looking for specific personality types. So I
Interesting.
got good at taking the test, but when I was taking it, honestly, I usually scored like 51% J, 49%.
Okay. Yeah. Well, um, when I took it in grad school, I was only ever a J. But
Really?
as it turns out, it makes sense because with stress, uh, I lose like the P and have
Oh,
to get like high because I'm a type 7 on the Enneagram. So like I get I become like a type 1 under stress, which is the perfectionist.
yep.
Yeah. Um, where at in East Texas, where are you talking about? Uh,
Tyler.
oh, okay. Yeah, I'm from Paris, Texas.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Parts.
And I've got a good friend of mine, actually a former, gosh, I'm getting old, a former postdoc of mine is the East Texas Psychological Association's president in Tyler.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah, Tyler's a, as much as it can be in Texas, kind of a thriving hub for mental health activity. So,
It is, and they've got a great. They're. I mean, compared to the rest of East Texas, they've got more resources there for sure. But UT
yes,
Tyler is so that their psychology program, and they just started their PhD over there too. But
they did.
I used to teach in that as an adjunct, and my believe it or not, this is how old my supervisor was. My supervisor and good friend of mine is a forensic neuropsychologist in Tyler who started the program at UT Tyler. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Just making the rounds. That's awesome.
Yep. It's this small world. Um, and we've got Sarah. Awesome. Sarah's here.
Hi,
Well,
Sarah.
Hey guys, I'm out on my walk, but I thought I'd just pop in and see what's going on.
Yeah.
that that's fantastic. I wish I could walk and talk at the same time, but no amount of
I'm not
medication,
walking too fast.
no amount of ADHD medication allows me to do that. So, um, in a safe manner, anyway. Um, well, as you guys have probably saw in the email, my intent tonight is to one just provide you guys the space to ask questions of anything and everything related to either private practice, practicum, internship, licensure, meaning of life, specialties, that kind of stuff. Also, any topic that we have covered in this class that you want either clarity on, or if you want to argue a point about a terrible test item question, you can do that too. That's probably worth points, by the way. Um, and yeah, just to give you guys the chance to do that. We did that a few weeks ago for week 5, but just wanted to offer it to y'all again. So the way this works, it's just if it's just the three of us, especially, could be more of a conversation. So if you have questions, I'm all ears. You've got me.
Wait, hold on. All right, give me 2 seconds. My wife is trying to get my attention, but I will come
Sure,
back.
no worries. Yeah. How about you,
Um,
Sarah?
I have 3 more classes left before pre-practicum, which get those classes done by the end of May. So I'll start pre-practicum in June. And I
Uh-huh.
honestly don't even know what that is. I, I don't
What
really know what to
pre-practicum is?
Yeah, like when
Uh-huh.
do you start interning? Is that practicum 1? Is that when I get to do the
Yep,
internship? Okay. So
that's
it's just
correct.
all right. So it's just a course you take individually. You don't take it along with other courses, but you have to start with pre-prac.
Right. So they they have that as a prereq for practicum because, as you can imagine, without that class, although I'm sure that you're not in this boat, without that class, many students get all the way up. They finish all their coursework and then have no plan and no idea
Mhm.
about what to do, like how to find a practicum and all that kind of stuff. And then so that class serves as a come to Jesus meeting for those who haven't even thought about practicum yet, and for those who
Yeah.
have, serves as kind of as a pause to really kind of reflect on taking everything that you've learned and then talking about a whole lot of practical stuff too.
Okay.
making the transition from theory to, okay, well, how do you talk to a supervisor that hurts your feelings, in their
Mhm.
supervision, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Do you have a practicum site already?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Where at?
Yeah. It's called Nourish Play Therapy in
Awesome.
Dallas, over in East Dallas. I have a good friend who she owns it, and I'm actually going there Tuesday to just spend the whole day there, and I get to sit in on like supervision meetings and a team meeting. Yeah, and
That's really cool.
yeah, so I'm excited. It's just, it's been a waiting game. I can't wait to start,
Sure.
but I'm getting there.
Well, my wife is from Pleasant Grove, and so when you say East Dallas, that place is near
That's
and dear
East
to my
Dallas.
heart. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not too far from there. So
It
anyway, okay,
makes
yeah.
me happy to hear too that you guys are going to be offering those services, or that you will be offering those services over there. Because, um, gosh, I mean, everybody needs it everywhere, but certainly over there.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. So all right,
Yeah.
thanks for answering my question.
Yeah. Um, and so the other thing too is pre-prac. As, you will have I'm pretty sure we're still doing it, but you will have um, like a case vignette, not a case vignette, like a personal counseling theory philosophy paper that you'll complete, where you outline, basically it's just your summary of, what does it mean to be a counselor? How does it work?
Mhm.
What's your role? What's the client's role? All that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, sort of like what you read when you're looking for your own counselor
Right.
on
Well,
their
and
pages.
yeah, and actually, if you think about it that way, when you go to complete that, and I'm sure you've probably already completed like 7 of those papers throughout,
No,
other classes, but
no, not really.
okay.
Well, yeah, maybe one actually. Now I'm remembering it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Usually in your theories and methods class, they make you do that, but I can't, I don't make students write papers because I did that for like 4 years when I was teaching. I was like, man, I am done reading grad
Yeah.
school last minute papers.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that would wait too well.
hmm Um, and so with that, what I would say is, even if you don't have that as a formal assignment in pre-prac, I'm telling you right now, I don't have an application for like people that request to do like practicum or anything like that at my office. But what I ask them for is that, like a summary statement of their approach to counseling. And so it would be a good idea for you to sit down and formally do that, at least just to have it with you in case, somebody like me wants to see it if you're trying to get a job somewhere.
Yeah, that's really good to know.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I think the
for
counselor that
sure.
I just spoke to must have done that because I on the not the intake interview, but just the like the 15-minute screening.
hmm
I was like, just out of curiosity, I'm studying this. This is what I want to do. What kind of counseling do you like to do? And she gave me like a bullet point. Oh, here's how I do counseling for the people who know what the theories are and how I do it. And I was like, wow, that was a very like I was not expecting you to be that prepared.
Sure.
It's kind of
Well,
like I do person centered and it's a lot of empathetic listening. She was like, nope, I do this.
interesting. Must be more on the CBT side of stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty CBT heavy, but
Mhm.
she it was like she started off. She's like, I think every good counselor should be person centered, and then I go, we do CBT. She's like, I can do DBT. She's like, it really just depends on you, but there's a lot of modalities we work with.
Hmm. I always make the dad joke that if you ask 10 existential therapists to define existential therapy, 5 of them are going to tell you 5 different things. The other 5 are just going to stare off into, like, the in the setting sun. So yeah. Um, well, so with our time tonight, we can talk about any of those topics. If y'all run out of questions, I can literally talk to a brick wall about all this stuff. So I've got plenty of topics I can fill in the gap. But if we do run out and y'all feel good about everything, we can even peace out too. So don't feel like you have to stay. Okay.
Okay. I've
Um,
got a couple questions
yeah.
that I'd like to talk about. First is, do you have any, I don't know, kind of pro tips on more effective ways to study for the NCE? Like, obviously everything we're doing is prep work for it, but by
Right.
nature, I don't spend a great deal of time and never have studying for exams. Like I was blessed to be a good test taker, and so it's not
Sure.
something I've had to worry about. But also, this is a test that kind of affects the outcome of the rest of my life in some way, and I'd like to
Yeah.
do more prep work for it than just walking in and winging it.
Yeah. And like you, I've always been a good test taker myself. Um, and having gone through the process of or a similar process with the psychology licensure process, um, I would not recommend not studying.
Yeah.
um, so Rosenthal is a name that he's a person that produces like up to date study guides and materials. And I'm pretty sure ranging from like $20 to thousands of dollars, depending on how far you want to go. Um,
Not that
don't
far.
spend it. Don't spend thousands of dollars ever, because here's what you need to know about those tests. If you were to walk in there tomorrow after having all your courses complete, you would absolutely fail that test,
Oh,
knew, er- even if you knew all the information taught to you in classes,
okay.
because that test is designed to measure these arbitrary core components of a set of like topics that aren't necessarily uh, the actual art or science of psychotherapy. Um, I know that sounds kind of cynical, but I mean, there's some basic stuff that like outline, which of these are not a part of Freud's, psychosocial or psychosexual developmental theory. Like there'll be questions like that, but then there'll be questions um, uh, like what's the federal law in 1970 whatever that relates to uh, patient confidentiality, that kind of stuff. Like there's just
Mhm.
random things that it's a waste of time for professors to focus on, because our job is to help you take the textbook stuff a bit further by trying to apply it to real world and thinking through real world situations. And so that's
Yeah.
why, by the way, in med school it's the same way, and psychology the same way. They all have to study independently resources outside of what they were doing in grad school. But
Yeah.
bottom line is, my advice would be, you know, getting some of Rosenthal's study materials, and they've got it broken down by section on, that is covered in the NC, the percentages of like, this is research, or like 13% of that test is that, and so forth. And then spending about, if you're efficient at studying and probably as intelligent as you are, I would probably commit to about at least a month of 2 to 3 nights a week, just either reading through it or listening to it on like the audible stuff.
Yeah.
For me personally, always had a hard time focusing on reading. So by the time I got to grad school, I figured out how to do. Actually, I think that's when Siri would read it for you.
Oh yeah.
And so what I actually did is I bought some bootleg study materials for our licensure exam, and then I was driving back and forth to Colorado and Texas a lot, so I was just listening to CDs. I literally had just CDs on, and my wife hated it because like by the end of it, she could have passed the triple P. Uh, but it's we've got like a 99, 98% pass rate from Amberton.
Wow.
Um, yep. And
Higher than the
that,
average.
as much as I want to take credit for it, I know that's a lot less to do with us professors and more to do with the fact that we've got some hardworking students who are ready to like, get it done and who are smart enough and savvy enough to to put the effort in and study.
Yeah.
Because you could pass that test, by the way, even if you didn't go to grad school for counseling.
Right.
Hmm.
Well,
All you
yeah.
have to,
I mean, it sounds like the education we received is not necessarily more practical, but yeah, more eminently more practical and much more about the application of all the kind of esoteric stuff that we talk
right.
about, especially in Wimbledon with all the professors being, or at least almost all the professors being adjunct and having their own practice or having their own experience. Like they're
Yeah,
bringing real world experience and knowledge to the things that we talk about in classes, whereas the exam is just a test to see if you can do the work to study and memorize a bunch of material.
exactly. And that's the thing is, I mean, probably all that information could be found in all your textbooks that you've collected along the way,
Mm-hmm.
but it would just be a lot more like I would say efficient to buy one of those resource guides and
Yeah.
go at it that way. Um, because the truth is, you could make 100 on the NCE and be a terrible therapist. And I've seen some amazing therapists take 2 or 3 times to pass that thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's an arbitrary hurdle, but it's a required hurdle. And I've also never met anybody, by the way, I've never met anybody, including myself, who's walked away from those tests being like, all right, I passed. No, like everybody who takes that walks away because I don't think you get your score immediately. I think it takes a little while.
Yeah.
But everybody who walks away from it literally is just like, maybe I shouldn't be a counselor.
Well, that's
But
actually the most helpful thing you said so far because
yeah,
that's I'm
that's
sure
how it will
I'm
feel. I remember like so our test is called the E-triple-P, and it's exactly the same format. It's 200, I think, and 25, 250 questions, multiple choice, 50 of which are like experimental questions, but they don't tell you which ones those are. Because I'm pretty sure I counted over 100 that were just absolute terrible questions. Um, but I remember sitting down this thing and being like, all right, here we go. This is it. And got to, I was like, first question right out the gate was like, what's the prevalence rate for like OCD in adolescence? And it had like 3.1%, 3.2%, 3.3%, or 3.4. And I was just like, no, okay.
yeah.
That's
See
how we're
what's
gonna play. That's how we're gonna play the game. Let's do it. Um,
Dr. Hebard once said something in his marriage and family class, and he said he's like counseling is both an art and a science. He goes, and part of the problem with today's training for counselors is that we almost exclusively focus on the scientific component of it. He goes, but there's
right.
so much to counseling that's just an art that you can't distill into a textbook. You just have to kind of have the innate hardwiring for it, and that doesn't always necessarily translate well to taking a national examination.
Yeah, you can't quantify that side of it. That's what's hard about teaching this is that there's a lot of students and in our school and in other counseling schools that don't have the intrinsic like psychological mindedness to be able to do that side of counseling well.
Hmm. Like
Um,
like
but
they might be qualitatively great at computational problems and they could do research really well perhaps, but the
mhm.
actual process of sitting down with a person and working through their problems, being there with them, that's a whole different thing that
Yeah,
you can say you need to be an empathetic listener on paper, but unless you have practiced that and maybe are even good at it to begin with,
right.
whole
And
other.
and yeah, and so my training background is in existential psychology, so that was my
Oh,
secondary focus in as a
yeah.
towards my master's and my doctorate in psychology. So neuropsych is a postdoc specialty. So everybody has to be a clinical psychologist. Then I had to do an additional residency for it. But before all that, I was an existential psychologist. And that's what I wanted to be when I grew up at the time. But I'm still very much at heart an existential psychologist. And as you now know, um, I mean, like you can't measure existential anxiety. I mean,
No.
I mean it's we just know we've got a lot, right? We've got a lot of existential anxiety right now, especially. But there are aspects of that person to person relating and an intuitiveness that can't be taught in
Mhm.
books or even really in counseling. Like there's some patients that you'll have that you're working with who have a who you will reach their limit, probably what I would define as their neurological capacity for psychological mindedness,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
otherwise be psychologically healthy, you know.
Yeah.
um
Wait.
but if you ever, with all your free time, just kidding, I know you don't have free time. If you ever are more interested in that, go look up some of the research on psychological mindedness as a trait, um because it is pretty fascinating in how it relates to not just therapists being good therapists, but just whether or not clients benefit from therapy and so forth. Mhm.
That's I'm actually glad you brought that up because I also really love the existential branch of therapy.
Mhm.
That's what I'm feel myself more drawn to. And then, like you said, in my massive amounts of free time, I mostly try to like my I know I'm a bad student for saying this, but like I know the textbooks are important, but usually I will read only whatever the professors are recommending me read, and then backfill my extra time with other extra scholarly research and materials. And I'm like, this is a thing that interests me in the counseling world. I'd like to know more about it. So I think I'm on my fourth Viktor Frankl book right now, and just
Mhm.
kind of into the therapy world. So yeah, psychological mindedness. That's a term I'd heard before, but not explored. So I'm definitely
Yeah.
going to give.
And in fact, if you go and I'm not certainly not calling you out for not remembering, but if you go back and look at one of my emails, you'll see that that's actually something I recommend is, we make you, I try to make people buy textbooks that they're likely to keep for forever, first of all, or going to need for forever. Secondly, um, I rarely ever read any of those textbooks that I bought. What I would do is kind of focus on, I would spend my time, you know, in that umbrella topic, and then trying to find a way for me to take like existential theory. What does existential theory have to say about this? And I'd go read, my own stuff and actually
Yeah,
spend my time doing that, just like you said. Yeah.
yeah. Dr. Bedard talks about that a lot. Not specifically this idea of reading your own material, but uh,
Hmm.
his classes are just so kind of off the wall. Just like he's saying whatever's coming into his head. But one of the things he
Uh-huh.
is it's not about clinically. We know that it's really not about what theory you use that's most effective. It's that you use a theory that you consider to be effective. And he's like, so if you find something that you like that you're interested
Hmm.
in, it's much more, you will be a much better, more effective counselor if you are knowledgeable about that area and can use it in a wide swath of areas as opposed to just trying to have as many different modalities under your belt as possible. I heard that maybe 9 months ago, and I was like, great, someone just gave me license to read whatever I wanted in any class I wanted. Like, I'm gonna learn what I want to learn on top of what.
Yep. And those are called contextual factors. Bruce Wampold was one of the original psychologists doing the research on that, because um, it's true, and it could be moonwalk therapy. And if your passion is one, believable, two, like logical and rational, so you can't, really couldn't be real moonwalk therapy, but I guess it could in some ways. And then, but three, also, it's clearly affecting you personally. when
Yeah,
you when you believe it, that passion is contagious and actually helps clients. And it actually makes sense because they're there because they need help with reshaping their perception of the world.
yeah,
And you're providing a framework for that through your passion. That's why computers, they can be effective at teaching, like CBT, but they're not a person. At least not yet. We've got, all the AI stuff coming out, but those
Yeah.
don't seem too therapeutic at the moment. Um, so Sarah, I know you're on your walk, but just want to make sure we're opening our dialogue up to you.
I can't. Hold on. I can't make my. Oh,
The
can you
fact
hear
that,
me? Oh, I
yep.
didn't know that. Okay, sorry. My hand is like frozen. It got so cold outside, so it wasn't opening up. I wanted to, if you don't mind, can you tell y'all quickly about an experience I had yesterday and just get your opinion? Um, I have like I I was able to have a free therapy session yesterday, and just randomly matched based on some quiz I took and or assessment I took. And so this lady pops up on the screen, and she's at home clearly. Her kid's like yelling through the other door, and I get that she's 15 minutes late. And she talked about her dogs and her cat for about 11 minutes. She turned her camera around. I saw her dog laying on her bare feet, and I was looking at her toes. It was so shocking to me. And I didn't know what to do. I just sort of like was going with it because it's a free session, and I would just observe so many things that I considered wrong in this,
Mhm.
in this session. And I was just laughing when we hung up. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Just all of the I her she's yelling at her dog, and the cat's getting in the dog food, and I see her prescription pill bottles like on her nightstand. I, is that considered good therapy or like bad therapy? I
Can I
know how much she gets paid. I
can I
didn't
ask
ask.
one question? So where in this scenario, were you the therapist or the client?
No, I was the client. It's
Oh,
through my insurance. Like it was a legitimate, you paid
Huh.
for, therapy session with a brand new therapist. And it ended up like, I feel like I became the therapist in this. Like I was talking to her about her life. It
Mhm.
was so weird. But
Yeah,
it's good to see what bad therapy is. I've seen it. I've experienced very great therapy, and I've never experienced this before. I know not what to like, what not to do at this point.
so I will say this. I don't think that experience is a common occurrence because I don't hear that a lot from like patients that have been, doing online therapy. But I'll tell you from just personal experience of having been in my own therapy for, gosh, 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some terribly like trained and very weird and just awful therapists. I've had some amazing therapists, and you're going to be very surprised by the amount of therapists that you question a lot of that stuff when you get out there. Yep. Even people in like leadership positions, you're going to come across, and it's going to be very surprising to you. Um, and especially, and this is going to sound real patronizing, and I promise you I don't want it to be. I'm a little bit in my own existential angst because I'm approaching 40 now, and so I'm like everything's related to like me getting older now. But as the longer you practice, the not the more comfortable you become with that, but I guess you recognize that there really is kind of just two groups of therapists, the amazing ones and the other ones. And it sounds like you had one of the other ones.
Okay.
And um, in my experience, that's not a common thing to for all the stuff that you just described, because there's a million things wrong with that scenario. Um, but
Like we're not supposed to see our therapist's feet.
I mean,
I mean,
I've
oh,
never seen that written down as a rule, but like I can't imagine being in the headspace that I'd be okay with any like I don't even like looking at my own feet. It's not therapeutic.
hmm.
it was strange.
Yeah,
I
I'm
thought it was
sorry. I'm
funny
sorry that was
though.
your
But
experience, though.
if I had to pay for that, I mean, is there a way that you can get your money back? It was bad.
Um, you know, it really would hinge on each practitioner's policies on like refunds and stuff like that. Most people, most counselors do like a free initial appointment, um, to where, even if you have insurance, we're not going to bill it because we don't know if we're a good fit yet.
Yeah.
And so, if you did pay any money, I can't tell you what you should do, right? Because that'd be terrible counseling. But I personally, if I experienced that, I would get my money back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely learned some things. So that's what I take from that experience.
Well, and that's a
No.
good point with like online therapy, because that's really the future. And I would say this is, if you can invest in like some decent quality, um, like camera system and microphone system,
Hmm.
that helps a whole lot. Here's just a real practical pro tip, by the way, guys, that will help you when you do online therapy. Everybody, every time I've had online therapy from a therapist, they're always just like looking over here. I was like I'm just like, who are you looking at? Like, I'm right here in the camera. But so I have fixed that for myself by fixing the camera right centered over the middle of my screen, and then putting like my patient's picture, and I've got y'all right now, literally right underneath that camera, so it looks like I'm looking directly at you. And when you're talking, I can see you, so it's not awkwardly like, staring at my other screen over here. Yeah.
I saw Haley just jump on the call. She was my partner in Bedard's class for all of the practical counseling stuff we did, the mock sessions. And in my reflection on it, he was like, what did you see in the camera? I was like, I saw myself like I know that I was looking directly at Haley the whole time, but because
Mhm.
Haley was slightly off on the left center of my screen, it just looked like I was staring down in the corner. I'm like, I gotta like if I ever do online therapy one day, that exactly what you just said. I'm like, I gotta find some way to center the camera so that I'm actually looking at the client, because I mean, how are you supposed to do therapy and feel like you're connecting with a client, or how's the client supposed to feel like they're connected to you if you're not
Right.
looking?
Right. Yeah. Because and it's important because you're going to respond to their nonverbals. That's the difference. And that's why online therapy can work, but you need real-time ability to respond to their nonverbals and for them to respond to your nonverbals. Because you can't hear me like shaking my head, but you can see me. And that needs to, timing wise, needs to correspond with like a natural flow of conversation. So anyway, hello Haley, welcome. We I'm sorry you missed. I just gave all the answers to the final exam, but I'm just kidding, I didn't do that. But we are talking about private practice stuff. We're talking about practicum, internship, anything and everything related to like, what do I do after grad school, and or any topic related to our coursework this semester. So what other questions do you guys have?
It was such a good conversation. I forgot to write them down. It's like I
Like,
know I had 3 or 4 questions that were burning, and then I asked one of them, and now I'm like, I don't remember what the other ones were. Anyone
it's
else
like
got
going
any?
to it's like going to the doctor's office. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I had problems. Don't ask me
Right.
what they were.
Now I ended up with an X-ray of my arm, and I'm worried about my heart.
Well, I don't think this is one of the ones I was originally going to ask, but I was talking with uh, my mother last night, who was a counselor out in East Texas for a long time before, she had kids and everything, and
Mm.
monkey wrench to that whole situation. But she's still very in touch with the mental health pulse in East Texas, and
Uh-huh.
she told me that a lot of people, at least out in that area, are moving away uh, from taking any insurance at all. Like I think she said, like
Yeah.
somewhere is like 75 to 90% of practitioners in East Texas just not doing insurance anymore. Do you have a personal stance on how you operate with that, and what the merits of that
Yeah.
are?
That makes, I mean, I can understand why they're going that direction, but it also makes me sad because that's going to mean a lot of people won't have access to care. Um, but at the same time, like, you've got to make a living doing what we do, and so I get you got to do what you need to do for your family. Here's my stance, and this was told to me by somebody who's not a counselor, I had met with like as a business mentorship whenever I was thinking about starting my practice, and it's kind of stuck with me ever since. Is that practically speaking, you never want to only have one stream of revenue generation, and so it's not a good idea, even if you could make more money doing so, to have only a cash pay practice, because that's going to be very sensitive to declines in the economy and inflation. On top of that, if that dries up or declines, what are you going to how are you going to replace the hole? And so what was recommended to me is just you want to have 3 or 4 ideally like streams of revenue kind of equally split, so that you can very efficiently and I would say feasibly beef up one of the areas should you lose one, and one of which would be accepting insurance. I accept insurance at my practice. It's a little bit different as a neuropsychologist, though, because I'm on the medical side. So I get to pretend like I'm a doc, like a real doctor, and build a medical side. But every now and then I get pushed into the behavioral health side. And just having worked with counselors, I can tell you there's a wide range of what the reimbursement is for 1 hour of psychotherapy. There's a wide range of the requirements for documentation of diagnoses and which ones will be covered, which ones won't officially. And I would say is there's a lot of fear, especially I hear a lot of fear talked about in grad school. You don't hear about it in the real world, but of like, I don't want to label somebody because by diagnosing them, through insurance, it's going to follow them the rest of their life. That used to be the case whenever they would screen for the prerequisites for health insurance, but where it stands right now, that like it's not as big of a stigma or associated with any long-term implications as it used to be. I'm not saying that diagnostics are great, but I will say that health insurance in general in the rural areas is a lot easier to get on the panels. So what that means is when you graduate and you get your license, when you graduate, do your 3,000 hours, not getting paid a lot, unfortunately. When you get that completed, you get your license. I remember thinking, wow, I guess like I can just go online and sign up to be a provider for Blue Cross. But as it turns out, and y'all may know this already, but so you have to apply as a provider, and like let's say Blue Cross, for example, depending on your practice location, they will look and see how many other counselors are in your area, and do they have a so-called need for the amount of people that are on Blue Cross in that area. They tend to underestimate that, so that like they've got fewer people in their contract or contracted with them than what is needed, which is unfortunate. And because of that, it tends to be more challenging in like the big city areas to get on insurance panels. Like you'll just be on a wait list, in other words. As compared to the rural areas out in East Texas, I'm pretty sure that tomorrow you probably get some letters, like a recruiting letter from Aetna. That's how it felt for me in Paris. Like I was like, maybe I should open a practice in Paris. And it was like overnight, somehow Blue Cross knew that and we're like, hey, have you ever thought about joining our panel? And so I was like, this is the easiest thing in the world. But that's not how it is in the big cities at all. Yeah.
not for that specific reason, but just the absolute need for it in a lot of the rural areas. And I don't consider East Tyler specifically rural, but it is in a very rural area for the most part. And it's like I said, I was talking with my folks last night, and they said they're actually both going back into their own counseling as clients. And she said some of the places that are open in Tyler have wait lists of 300 people that are just dying to see somebody, and there's nobody there to do it. And I'm like, uh, yeah, that sounds about right. And also, if an insurance company looks at that, they're going to go, oh, look at that. We don't have enough people out there for the massive amount of need that's present.
Right. Well, and that's where like I get into like my experience with Medicaid for kids. I'll spare you my whole philosophical discussion. I'll just say this is where I finally landed was I have committed my practice to ranging between 7 and 10% of it being pro bono. In other words, I'm still going to charge something just because, you know, as y'all know, they've got to give something to feel like they're invested in it. But I'm going to reserve that space there. And that's been primarily filled by folks without insurance who like are, you know, don't have any money, or for kids on Medicaid, because Medicaid is a challenging insurance to bill. It's the most challenging in the state of Texas, especially. Along those lines with insurance, and this is just a real quick, good topic, but insurance, just so you know, will pay probably between $50 for an hour of psychotherapy and $140, depending on who we're talking about. Like Aetna, I think last I heard, Aetna was like paying 112 or 118 or something. It's always random like that. As compared to United, which like 6 months ago was paying, I think, $55 for the same thing. Yep. Even like their best plans is still just $50. And you always hear people saying, hey, well, you can, you know, maybe you can negotiate with them. There's no negotiating. That was in the past, back in the day when there was like 7 people on the planet. Like you could talk to somebody, but now where we're at, like there's no negotiating. So if you decide to accept insurance, what you'll do is you'll apply. They'll send you back before they approve you to be on their panel. They'll send you a contract. Inside that contract that you have to sign and send back to them is a reimbursement fee schedule. It'll tell you what for the next year anyway until they renew it, what you can expect to get paid per CPT code. That's another thing you'll need to learn. But you only need to know like 2 CPT codes. Those like the billing code, which is awesome because physicians have to know like 1,000 of them or whatever. But insurances, well, I'll say this. There's been a trend of more people relying on mental health benefits from insurers, at least anecdotally in my practice. And so to give it up completely, it hurts my heart. I understand if somebody had to do that, but like there's a former student that was that's now an LPC at my practice. She had to drop Blue Cross because within like 2 weeks they reduced her reimbursement rate by like 30%.
Wow.
Yeah. And can you imagine like working at a job, right? Where you like 1 month you get paid this and the next month they're like, hey, by the way, we're only gonna pay you half of what you used to make. Hope you're still okay with that. Like,
no, I can't imagine any job ever doing that.
Right.
So
I get it. Yeah.
It happened to my former boss after I got laid off about 6 months ago just due to COVID stuff. Weirdly enough, it was the company was doing really good during COVID, and then when COVID kind of blew over, they're like, "Oh, all our money's gone." But it just freed me up for school full time, tangentially. So sorry. So I still keep in touch with my boss, and she said, "Yeah, we had to. They made us take a 30% pay cut or leave." And I was like, I can't imagine being in that situation. Like your former student slash current intern, I can't imagine working with somebody and then just coming along and saying, "Oh, no, you remember those reimbursements? Those were good old times, weren't they?"
Yeah. Well, when you go to make your websites at some point, if you decide to go to private practice, um, just remember that it's probably not a good idea to put the names of what insurance panels that you're on. Just put like, hey, we accept insurance, and call to find out if we're on the panel, basically. Because when you put the specific ones on there, it fluctuates so much that you're probably going to be constantly readjusting it.
That that actually explains a lot because I was recently looking for someone who took the insurance that we have, and on their Psychology Today profile, they had a whole bunch of them listed. And then when I
Yeah,
went to the website,
usually never accurate. Yeah.
don't get to take insurance anymore. I was just like,
Yeah.
well, we have a
And
discrepancy.
I'm pretty sure right now my website, it wasn't done by me. This part wasn't, but they listed my insurances, and I just got an email a few days ago from my office manager asking if I could take those off because we're getting a million calls for people that we don't accept their insurance. Yeah. Um, so Haley, if you've got any questions, would love to. You don't have to talk. You can just sit here. Or if you do have questions, we're all ears.
Yeah, sorry, I got off. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Uh-oh. Oh, cool. Okay. I got off work
Yeah.
a little late, so I was just jumping on to catch what I could. But I was curious, so when you apply for the insurance panel, like say
Mhm.
you're in a rural area and then you move into a larger city, do you have to reapply per location? Or how does that?
Not at
No?
all. No.
So I could cheat the system and move out into the middle of nowhere for a minute
In
if I
fact,
needed
that's
to.
actually a strategy that I mean, it's a strategy that worked for me. Um, but I can't promise it worked for everybody else, but that's a strategy that I encourage students to consider because one, because I have a heart for the rural areas, it will, at least for a time, expand the access to care out there. And then two is that you can bring it back to like a bigger city, and you're still on the insurance panel. You can't do that across states a lot of times, though, by the way, because insurances will often have like a region. And once you go outside that region, it'll be a whole different company that they don't even talk to that company, even if it's still Blue Cross.
Huh. That's good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah. Um, but here's my other practical advice with applying for insurance. If you try to do them individually, it's going to take you 7 years to get through all the same questions 400 times that you're probably going to do incorrectly in some way, that you won't know that you did it incorrectly until 3 months after you send it in, because it takes like literally 3 months for them to even read like your application. So don't do that.
Oh my gosh.
Hire, and I'm probably exaggerating a bit, but there are plenty of companies out there that do what's called credentialing and will help and will get you on those insurance panels by having gather the information that they need, and then they go through a database that can plug all that data in to all of the applications that you want at one time, and they end up getting paid if they get you on those panels. And so they kind of have a motivation to make sure that they are good at that. Yeah. And it doesn't cost as much as you can imagine. I mean, it's only maybe like a couple $100 usually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's nice. Sorry, you kind of cut out a little bit. Are you talking about like a liaison that goes between you and the
Yeah. Well,
insurance?
there's some of them are like billing companies. That's usually who does it. So like if you look up like a psychotherapy billing company, Dallas, there's tons of just, private businesses that, as one of their services that they'll do is that.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd say
And
that's worth
usually,
the cost?
oh yeah, yes. I
Okay.
mean, at least it was for me with ADHD, because let me tell you, those kinds of like detailed contracts like that, ugh, I'm not great at. And I remember sitting down doing the Medicare one. I was like, all right, Medicare, here we go. And then I spent like 28 hours filling out all the paperwork, sent it in, was anxiously waiting for it to come back. And it was like 2 months later, they came back and was like, but you forgot this one page. Can you send that one page back in? So I was like, cool. And I literally signed my name, put it back in the mail. 2 months later, came back and said, you're on a wait list. I was like, what are we doing here? Like, should I send a pigeon next time? Like, I don't know what to do.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
But
that sounds pretty rough.
don't do that. Is what I'm saying.
Noted.
Yeah.
Noted. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and usually some of the insurance panels will require that you were licensed for like 2 or 3 years, by the way, before you can even apply.
Hmm.
I remember finding that strange. I was like, well, how in the world, like, could somebody stay licensed if you can't make money? You know, but I think they've gone away from that because they used to do that a lot more, but I haven't heard that as much lately. Yeah.
That's good. It's good to
Yeah.
know.
And what other questions you guys have?
I have a question. Do you have any advice for students who want to get their PhD? Like graduate, work, and then go get your PhD, or graduate and go straight to school and knock it out? I'm just curious.
PhD in counseling or psychology?
Yes, or something related. Yes.
Okay. I do. So probably once a semester, I'll have one of my students approach me and ask me just for that exact advice. And I'll keep it as brief as I possibly can, knowing that I say that all the time and it's never brief, but I'll try. Long story short is, if you're going to do only counseling and you don't see yourself being interested in providing psychological assessments or testifying in court as an expert or doing forensic stuff, if you don't see yourself doing those things and just doing the counseling side, I don't recommend pursuing your PhD unless you just, for life meaning, obviously it would bring a lot of meaning, but practically speaking, the investment from time and money has essentially no return in reimbursement rate for counseling. Now, you will get a lot more training, and ultimately, like, it is about 4 times more in-depth training than what you guys have got just finished with. And I'm not saying what you did was light. It's just that the PhD route tends to force you to do like a lot more hours of practicum. You take, twice as many classes, and then you usually have like a dissertation that you're doing as well. And so you will become a lot more knowledgeable, a lot more competent, but in the long run, it's not going to make you more money or even offset the investment that you probably spent in time and money to be worth it. Now, if you want to be a psychologist to do testing and counseling, or if you want to be a counselor who also wants to teach, like in, either grad school or undergrad, it's probably worth it. Yep. I say probably. It is for me, or was for me. But I was in the same boat. I went to Colorado Christian University for a year and a half, and it was almost finished with my master's in counseling. And then, pre-ADHD, Dr. Armstrong impulsively transferred to my doctoral program and had to retake all those classes. But the testing side of it's, you absolutely, like, if that's something that interests you or the forensic world does, you'll probably need to be a psychologist. And if that's the case, that's a whole separate like pathway that is worth it and that you will need in order to do it. But just in general though, it's hard to justify it because you don't get paid any more per hour. And I'll be honest with you, patients don't know the difference between a PhD and an LPC. Like even if you have those after your initials, they're gonna
Yeah.
even if you're an LPC, they're gonna call you doctor and they're gonna wonder why you're not prescribing them medication. I'm serious. I've had a
Yeah.
lot of patients angry at the end of the first session, being like, "Oh, what are you gonna prescribe?" uh, Mindfulness,
A long walk and maybe some
right?
breathing.
Right.
Yeah,
No,
it's high on your
but
own
yeah,
supply.
I hope that does that help.
Yeah, it helps. It's just
And what
something
else?
I've always wanted. And so I'm
Yeah,
like, may as well just keep going for it. But is that practical? Do I, I'm in this program later in life anyway, as it is. And if I'm going to do it, then I need to just do it, I guess.
hey,
Graduate and just start the next semester in another school, I guess.
I
It's a
I'm
lot
right
to
there
think
with
about.
you. Well, and I'll say this too
Well,
is
you did it.
yeah. So even like my psychopharm degree, which was after my doctorate, like for me, that was more about gaining the knowledge and the competence, and truly has just dramatically like reinvigorated and shaped and improved my competence as a clinician. Um, but I don't get paid anymore for that degree, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I will say this though is if you're interested in uh, pursuing the psychology route, I'm always more than happy to meet with students to help you steer clear of just the obstacles of that process and how to stay around those and save money and do it efficiently. Because you can get your doctorate, your PsyD, your master's from here, from Amberton, will transfer to several programs to where it would only take you about 2.5 more years to get your PsyD, which is what I have. Um, and you'd be a doctor and you could be a psychologist that way.
That interests me.
Yep.
2.5 years that doesn't seem too overwhelming,
No, and
you know.
well, and so if that is something that you decide you're interested in, just reach out to me because we can meet and talk about that stuff. Like I said, about once a semester, I end up having that conversation with a student. Yeah, and
Okay.
we've had several
Thank
students
you.
do that. Yep. hmm Actually, I forgot my postdoc right now, who's about to be like a licensed psychologist. She's finishing up her postdoctoral hours. Um, she is an Amberton student that did that. She went back and did her PsyD and is, Dr.
That's
Lapart now.
awesome.
Mhm.
I'd like to connect with her and ask her some questions, but
Sure.
yeah, I know we're all different, but for me, it's like, why not? This is my time in life to just go for it,
hmm
and that's what I'm doing. So, and it's been fun. It's challenging, but it's fun. And it's just, I don't know, a dream of mine. So we'll see.
You know, I for me, I remember thinking, gosh, I loved what I was learning in master's program, and it was good. It was a good education. I was a lot more anxious then than I am now, thankfully. But I remember thinking, I don't feel like I know enough though to be good at this yet. And I really wanted a lot more like in-depth training with existential theory. And so that was ultimately the decision point for me was like, all right, I'm gonna pursue this, this doctorate thing. Um, but I kind of went in blindly, not understanding like accreditation and how that matters. And that's the stuff that I'd be more than happy to share with you at some point. But that requires a
Thank
lot
you.
more in-depth conversation that I'll have to ask you like questions like, well, what do you want to do? That kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Thanks for answering.
for sure.
Doc, I've got to leave here in just a second
Sure.
to cooking dinner, but I have a hungry wife waiting for me. But I wanted to ask one more question before I go, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say that I'm about to ask a broad question. For our practicum sites, is there anything that you would recommend doing in particular to kind of squeeze as much as we can out of the process? I mean, I'm going into this a little bit blind, especially because I'm going to be into a practicum site in a city that I haven't lived in a decade, so I don't really have as many contacts out there. I mean, I'm doing my best to kind of network and find a good place, but what would you say is kind of the top thing that we should be considering and thinking about when we go into these sites?
Well, don't real quick. Don't forget to reach out to me, and I'm gonna put in the chat my cell phone number, guys, in case y'all don't have it. Y'all can reach out anytime you want. Just know that if I don't answer, it's probably because I'm either taking a nap or I'm angry about having to grade papers or something. But please reach out to me though, Tyler, because I do know some folks out in the East Texas and the Tyler area. Just would be good connections for you to meet who might open some doors for you down the road.
Definitely. Yeah.
There you go. And so to answer your question, every practicum is different, and I wish there's a more standardized like experience. And so it's kind of hard to say. I would say this is, in the long run, it's not going to be what you learn and sitting there watching people do counseling, like while you're in practicum, although accumulated over time, yes. Really, it's going to be, if I could encourage you to do anything, I would spend that time self-reflecting on your experience, like in and around clients, and just like, am I nervous when I greet them? Like, if it maybe they don't have you do any counseling, you're just awkwardly sitting in the corner, they're staring at everybody. If that's happening, like just pay attention to your experience, and because a lot of those feelings are going to be what comes up, especially in the first, I mean, maybe forever years, but first few years when you start practicing, you're gonna notice yourself, yeah. And then once you kind of self-reflect and kind of get to know what that is, that's the gold to bring to your supervisor and process.
Okay.
Because what ends up eating up a lot of supervision time that I try to avoid is like, hey, I've got this client and I'm trying to get them scheduled for here. And what, then, there's progress notes that we've got to sign and review. Like that stuff eats up too much time. The heart of supervision, or the benefit from it, is being able to bring in your own process.
Okay. That's solid stuff. Okay. Well, obviously you guys keep doing whatever you're doing, but this has been great. Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. I will definitely.
Oh, absolutely. Please do. Yep. Sounds good. We'll see you later.
Hi, Tyler. And I need to head out too.
Oh, sure.
So.
No worries. Is Haley still on?
Haley is gone as well. So
no, she may have put something in the chat. It looks like someone wrote. That's your phone number.
Yeah, I just shared that with y'all. So
okay.
But yeah, y'all please feel free to reach out. Like I love teaching in class and all that stuff, but this stuff right here is where I love helping the most, because it's the stuff that makes you the most anxious, and you guys don't even know it yet, but you're going to be amazing therapists. I'm really excited that y'all are going to be licensed someday. Mm-hmm.
That's really kind of you. Thanks, Doc.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, y'all have a great rest of your night.
Y'all have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.